to post it on the Career Service Campus web portal as well, where there's also a bunch of great information regarding resume writing on there. So feel free to ask questions as we go. You can use the chat box, or you can raise your hand and ask it out loud. So we will get started. All right. So general services that are available through your career services department. I am really happy to help you with anything career development related. So some of those topics could be individual career counseling, resume and cover letter writing, which is this evening's hot topic, interview preparation, self-assessments, job placement assistance, or internship placement assistance. If you would like to schedule a meeting with me, you're welcome to email career.services@myunion.edu, or you can call the phone number on the screen. Does anyone have any general questions about services that are available? Okay. All right, so we'll just jump right into it. What is a resume? It is a professional document that highlights your skills, experience, and goals in relation to the job you are applying for. It is a marketing tool and you are the product. The objective is to land that interview and get that face-to-face contact with the employer. So all resumes have some key content to it: contact information, professional profile, work experience, and education. And we're going to talk about each of these. So your contact information, your name should be front and center, top of your resume. I encourage it to be in larger fonts, in bold. Include your full address. Even if you're applying for a remote position, it's still important that employers know where you reside. You want to include a reliable phone number with a voicemail that is one set up, has that it's not a full inbox, and it has a clear and professional message. None of those cutesy things that your friends and family enjoy. You want to make sure it is professional. And an appropriate email address. I do encourage everybody to create an email that is specifically for professional networking and job search purposes. This way you will ensure that those important emails don't get lost in your inbox with the potential junk mail that we all get every day. So make sure it is a professional email that could be your first name, your last name at Gmail or Outlook, whatever your email provider preference is. And nowadays, the best practice is to include a link to your LinkedIn profile if you have one. LinkedIn is a wonderful resource for employers to learn more about you and to see what shared connections you might have. Next is your professional summary or objective. This is optional and not required. If you do include it, it is at the top of your resume below your contact information. This is a short statement summarizing who you are professionally and stating your goals. It's typically 1 to 3 sentences in paragraph form, and things to consider including are your years of experience with your job title, key certifications or licenses that you possess, and you can also include some skills or achievements that you're really proud of. So the next topic we're going to discuss is highlight of qualifications. This is also optional, and this would be something that you can use instead of a professional summary, or you can use both. You have that choice. And hold on, I do see there's a question. We are moving abroad soon and do not know what our new address will be. Should I use my current address or on my resume when applying to jobs in a new country? So I would, that is a great question. So if you know what your new address is going to be, yes, I encourage you to use that new address. If you're not sure what it's going to be, you have to use your current address, and you will state in your cover letter that you are relocating. and we'll talk about more about that. So great question. All right, so going back to highlight of qualifications. So in comparison to your professional summary, this that is in paragraph form, this is in bulleted form. So it's bullet phrases highlighting your hard and soft skills, typically 3 to 7 bulleted statements long, and it's an opportunity to insert buzzwords. So buzzwords are, you'll hear me mention this more than once. So buzzwords are industry-specific jargon or those key words that employers are definitely going to be looking for in your resume that show that you have the experience and skills related to the job. And your highlight of qualifications is also a great opportunity to include transferable skills from both professional and personal experience. So sometimes it's really hard to know where to include those skills from your personal life. That's not necessarily from your work history. And this is a great area that you can include that. Does anyone have any questions regarding professional summaries versus highlight of qualifications? Okay. All right. So next, your professional experience. This is the main portion of your resume. It can also be called work history or work experience or something similar. It is arranged in the most appropriate format that fits your needs. Those formats are chronological, functional, or a combination of both, and I will discuss those briefly. The best practice is to highlight your job title over the company for which you work. So once upon a time, it used to be the company and then the job title, but now it's your job title is usually holds more importance than the employer for whom you worked. There are a few exceptions to that. And for instance, if you've worked for the same company for a significant amount of time, let's say over 10 years, and you've had many positions with that company, you would list the company and its location first, and then below it, your most recent or current job title and the dates, give examples of job duties under the job title. Then you would move on to the job title that you had prior to that one and give examples. So that's the exception, one of the exceptions that can be made. Dates and locations are very important. You always want to include them on your resume. You're going to summarize all past work experience, relevant work experience, I should say, and you can include volunteer work that is relevant to the job for which you are applying, as well as any organizations or extracurricular activities that you might participate in. And once again, include all those relevant transferable skills. Okay, so we are moving on to education. You want to highlight all training and certificates that you have obtained or completed. You typically list your highest level of education first and then work your way backwards. And the placement on your resume depends on whether your education is the most recent qualifying factor for the position for which you are applying to or not. So typically your education is near the bottom of your resume. But if you're currently enrolled in a program here at Union and completion of that program is what is going to qualify you for the position that you are applying for, then you would want to put your education towards the top. I hope that makes sense. So let me know if you have any questions. You do not need to include your high school diploma on your resume if you are currently enrolled or have completed a college degree program. So all of you do not need to put your high school diploma on your resume. It is assumed that you have at least that to be a student here at Union. And other information to include. Bulleting and highlights can help capture more information, such as a GPA of 3.5 or higher, any special projects you have completed, such as thesis or dissertation, any awards you have received, and if you're currently enrolled in a program, you want to list it on your resume and include the expected completion dates. All right, does anyone have any questions? Nope. All right, there is a question in the chat. Okay, so there's a question in the chat about going back to school to a field unrelated to bachelor's degree and 25 plus years of experience. So I'm going to talk about formats next. And one of the formats that might be something to highlight when in your case is the functional. So keep that in mind. All right, any other questions? Okay, so now moving on to the different writing formats for your resume. So we'll start with chronological. This is a traditional resume, ideal for those who are staying on the same career path with a good all-around mixture of education and work experience. A professional summary section is a good pairing for this type of resume, and it's typically arranged in a reverse chronological order, starting with your most recent or current job and working your way backwards. My recommendation with this format is you only include about the last 10 years or so of professional experience. If you've been staying in the same field for a very long period of time, longer than 10 years, an employer really wants to know about your more recent work experience and is not as concerned about something that you did 20 plus years ago. So that's give or take 10 years, and use your best discretion when including your work history on your resume. So here is a sample of a chronological resume. At the top, you can see that the individual, Mr. Doe, has included his LinkedIn profile with his contact information. He has also chosen to use both a professional profile and a summary of qualifications. So as I said before, those are optional. And in this case, he went with both. And then the main part of the resume is the professional experience. So this person is applying for a position that their degree plus their internship that they're completing as part of their program will qualify them for the position they're applying to. So they included their current position as an intern that is temporary, and then their more permanent position that they've been working in for many years right below that. And then they included other work history that is somewhat relevant, and it does go more than 10 years. So it is okay to go beyond that 10-year of work history. And then towards the bottom is his education and volunteer experience. Does anyone have any questions about the chronological formats? And then somebody sent me a message. Did you say to include a job's complete address for work history instead of just the city and state? You do not need to include complete address, just the city and state is all that is needed when you're including locations on your resume. Good question. All right, so the next format we're going to discuss is called functional. So this is a skill-based resume, and I'm going to say this is one of my favorite types of resumes, and it is becoming more and more common. Sometimes people are a little bit more nervous to start out writing this type of resume, but it is very effective. So it is most appropriate for someone making a career change. So someone sent me a message about that. So this is the style that's really good for those making career changes, those who have employment gaps or missing dates on their resume, or someone who is new to the workforce, but it's not limited to those populations. Anyone can use this format. And I'll be honest, this is the format that I used when I applied for this position here at Union. It is a great opportunity to really highlight all of your skills from various jobs that you've done over the years. So in this type of resume format, there is a main section titled Qualification Summary or Professional Skills or something similar. In that section, you identify 1 to 3 subtitles, so topics that you really want to highlight for the employer. You're going to use bullet points to provide brief descriptions that demonstrate your abilities in those specific areas. This is a great opportunity to include specific examples and results, such as increased sales production by 40%, design promotional program that resulted in an increase in customer base. And I also have a sample of this. So at the top is contact information. Once again, objective and highlighted qualifications. And then the main part of the resume is professional skills. This individual, Joyce Job Seeker, decided to highlight communication skills and office technology skills and gave examples under each of those subtitles. And she is pulling these items from all of her different work history, not just her most recent work history. So it's from her work history in education, I should say. And then below that is her employment history. So she is listing her job title, her employer, the location, and the dates. So in this resume, you're still going to want to include dates, but if you have gaps in your dates on your resume, it's not going to be the first thing that jumps out to an employer. And I will also say with this format, it's okay, my personal opinion anyway, some people might disagree with me, it is okay to go beyond that 10 years of work history. But with that being said, you're going to only include dates for those job titles that you've worked with in about the last 10 years. And then after that, you just would stop including the dates. You would list the job title, the employer, and the location, and just leave the date out. So an employer is going to assume that it was a while ago, but that's okay. And then towards the bottom is education, and that could be at the top if appropriate too. Any questions? Okay, and that brings us to the combination format. So this combines the best of both worlds of the chronological and functional writing styles. It emphasizes your achievements and strengths as well as your experience. It typically starts with a qualification summary or professional skills section, and it is followed by an employment history arranged in reverse chronological order, including dates and detailed information on job duties for each work experience. So if you think back to the functional resume sample that I just showed you, under that employment section, it would look exactly the same as that resume, but under that employment section, there would be bullet points with job duties for each of the job titles. So it would be providing more information. Does anyone have any questions on the 3 different formats that we have covered? All right. So general guidelines to keep in mind when you are writing your resume. Typically, your resume is 1 to 2 pages in length. It should not be any more than 2 pages. I recommend that it's either 1 full page or 2 full pages, not 1 1/4 or 1 1/2. If you're going to go to 2 full pages, you really want to take advantage of all the real estate that's available on that document. And if it's just over, chances are, just over 1 page, I should say, chances are you can play with the formatting and reduce it to just 1 page. And if you have trouble with that, feel free to email it to me. That's one of the things that I'm really good at. So 1 to 2 pages, you're going to try to be short, sweet, and to the point when you're highlighting your work history. So before I go on, I am going to ask a question. Feel free to enter in the chat if you would like. How long do you think an employer typically spends looking at your resume? The initial time that they look at your resume, how long do you think they spend on it? Any guesses? All right, one person said 1 minute, someone said 20 seconds. Any other guesses? 10 to 15 minutes, less than 1 minute? Okay, all great guesses. So this is a bit of a shocker. I was surprised when I first learned this, and you can Google it and there'll be a couple different answers, but it's less than 10 seconds. They typically say 6 to 7 seconds, which is wild to me. They're literally just glancing at it really quickly. One, it needs to be user-friendly and easy to read, and they're just checking to see if you have the key, you meet the key job qualifications for the posting. So with that being said, they want to make sure that you have the appropriate education, or if they had 1 to 2 years of related work experience, or even valid driver's license, reliable transportation, something like that. They're just checking to make sure you check off the initial boxes. And from there, they're gonna either put you in a yes, no, or maybe pile. You never know how many people you're up against. It could be 3 people, 20, 200. So the initial review of your resume is very, very brief. And then they're gonna come back to it and they are gonna spend way more time looking at it before they bring you in for an interview. And so that just puts it in perspective though of how short and concise your resume really needs to be. I do not recommend any paragraphs on it besides that first like sentence or two if you decide to use the professional summary. Okay, so going back to general guidelines, you want to use bullet points and sentence fragments. You're going to tailor your resume to the job description, include those buzzwords, those keywords to help it stick out. You're going to take responsibility for writing your own resume. Try not to use a template or copy from other resources. Make sure you proofread. The more eyes on it, the better. Ask friends or family to look at it. I encourage you to send it to me in email and I will also review it. And if you feel like you have a really good draft of a resume going, take a break and come back to it a couple days later. You might notice something that you hadn't noticed before that could be changed. So the more times you proofread it, the better. Avoid using pronouns such as I or me. You typically write in a past tense, except for when writing about your current position. Avoid abbreviations unless they are universally known. Make sure that it is aesthetically pleasing and easy to read and well balanced throughout the document. So it's even looking if you were to look at it. When you send your resume to an employer, if you're sending it in an email, I encourage you to send it as an attachment as a PDF file when possible. So in an email, that is possible. And if you're uploading it to an online job portal, that might not always be an option, but if it is an option, I encourage you to do so because that will prevent there being any formatting issues when the person opens up the document. So you never know what version of Word they are using, or maybe they don't have Word and they're opening it up on their Google Drive. And so you just want to ensure that there's nothing funky happens with the formatting. Okay, so that covers resume writing. Any questions before I move on to CVs? Okay, so what is a curriculum vitae? Is more commonly referred to as a CV. This a scholarly resume used when applying for positions in academics, education, medical, scientific, or research fields. It is also used for applying for graduate school, fellowships, or grants. And the objective is to construct a scholarly identity. So what should you include in your CV? It's going to include all the same information that you included in your resume, just way more detail. So on your resume, I said it should be 1 to 2 pages. Your CV can be as long as you need it to be. And you are also typically going to use similar formats that we talked about for your resume. You can use whatever format is best for your needs and what you're trying to get across in your CV. So you're going to include name and contact information. Typically, most CVs do include a professional statement or summary of some sort. Your education, you're going to go way more in depth into your education than you typically do on your resume. So you're going to include your thesis or dissertation, any licenses or certifications you have, all relevant coursework. You're going to highlight classes most relevant to your career objectives. Also skills, research, and teaching experience, any related professional experience, professional associations and memberships that you are part of, any professional training or development that you have participated in. That can include workshops, seminars, etc., grants, honors, awards, and scholarships. If you have provided consulting experience, you definitely want to include that on your CV. Any volunteer activities, presentations, and lectures you have facilitated, grants and fellowships, and publications. Any questions about CVs? Okay, moving on to cover letters. So I recommend to always include a cover letter with your resume, even if it is optional. So this helps you stand out from the rest of the crowd, and it's just best practice. So you want to tailor and personalize each letter to each employer. It's typically written in a conversational tone, and it includes detailed, relevant information and examples. You're going to avoid using fragments and use full sentences. You're going to proofread as always, and you're going to use a formal greeting. So if you have the hiring manager's full name, you are going to address it directly to them. If you do not know their name, you're going to use a general greeting such as "to whom it may concern, dear hiring manager." Your cover letter should be one page with 3 to 4 paragraphs. We will discuss each of those paragraphs. So the first paragraph, you're going to introduce yourself, including your highest degree earned or expected graduation date. You're going to state the position for which you're applying to and where you learned about the opportunity. So this is a great opportunity to name drop if someone referred you to the position. So this first paragraph is only a couple sentences long. It's very short. And then the middle part of your cover letter, it can be 1 to 2 paragraphs. You're going to summarize your skills and include specific examples. You're going to match your skills with those in the job description, and you're going to insert those buzzwords, those key words to help you stick out to the employer. In this section, you can also give some information on something that maybe was not fully addressed in your resume. So an example of that is if you are relocating, you're applying to a position, or you want to relocate for a position, you would state right in your resume that you are relocating, and you can write a couple sentences about that. Or if you have a gap in your work history, you can also give some more detailed information about that, such as, let's say you've been stay-at-home dad for the last 2 years of the pandemic because your kids were in and out of school, and you decided to take that as an opportunity to go to school full-time yourself. So it's absolutely okay to write about that in your cover letter. Or if you're making a career change, you can write a paragraph about why you're making that career change. So this is an opportunity just to give more information about something that you otherwise would not be able to. And then your closing paragraph. This is a final statement about why you're the right candidate for the position. You can suggest a time and date that you're available to be interviewed, and as always, express gratitude and thank them for their time. And that brings us to references. So your references, you typically have 3 to 5 professional references. This should include professional peers, supervisors, your advisor, or professors. You should not include friends or family. Occasionally, you can make a few exceptions. Let's say you and your friend volunteered at the local soup kitchen together. So that person would be able to give information on your professionalism, but that should not be one of your top references. I recommend that you always ask individuals for their permission to use them as a reference to ensure their willingness and ability to provide a positive reference. More often than not, they're going to say yes, but you do want to give them the opportunity to say no if they really just don't feel like they can speak to your professionalism, or maybe they feel that they haven't worked with you long enough. But ideally you ask them, they say yes. And if they say yes, I encourage you also to give them a couple topics you would love for them to highlight. If you're really proud of a project you partnered with them on, or if you want them to talk about how you are really engaged in the community or an awesome team player, give them a couple topics that will help them when they get a call from the employer for them to expand upon. So you want to make sure you have reliable contact information for all of these references. So their full name, their title, the business or organization they are associated with, their phone and email. It is important that you have both phone and email these days. A lot of employers are starting to do outreach to references via email. They might just ask a few questions in the email, or they might even send a survey for your reference to fill out. So it is important that you include both of those. You should provide your references on a separate sheet of paper from your resume. So best practice is to only provide your references when asked for. And going back to your resume, once upon a time, it was recommended that you put at the bottom of it, references available upon request. That's no longer needed. It is assumed that you will have references available and you provide them when requested. So when you, my opinion, when you're applying to a job, you always send your resume and cover letter, but you do not send your references unless they ask for that in the job application process. So you make sure your references are ready and available to provide though. So you want to have a whole separate Word document with your references. You're going to keep the format consistent with that of your resume. So you can copy and paste that contact information that you had on the top of your resume and put it at the top of your references. And you're going to keep the rest of the formatting and font size and style the same as how you had it in your resume. And with that, you will it'll be ready to be sent to an employer in an email as an attachment, or you will print it out and bring it with you to the job interview in case they ask for it then. Okay, so that wraps up references, and that also wraps up tonight's topics. So does anyone have any questions about anything we have discussed so far? All right, I am not seeing anything in the chat box. Feel free to, if you do have questions, feel free to put it in the chat box or unmute yourself. And you're also welcome to send me an email if you have questions and you don't feel comfortable asking them here, or email me to schedule an appointment if you are interested. All right, thank you, everybody. I'm happy to schedule appointments with any of you. Email is career.services@myunion.edu. Have a wonderful evening. Oh, there is a question. Okay, Angela, you asked, what about photos on your resume? Ooh, that is a good question. So I'm going to say typically, it is not recommended unless you're applying to a field that that is the norm. So I'm, for example, real estate, and sometimes marketing, using photos on, if you're in the marketing field and showing what your digital skills are, that might be appropriate, but normally it is not appropriate. You would include your link to your LinkedIn profile. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.